Hi, I'm Neville Rose and I'm a professional CV writer. Yes, we really do exist. And today I'm going to show you how to write a compelling CV. Your CV is likely to be the first communication that you have with a potential new employer. And as we all know, first impressions count. So it's important that your CV looks professional. Make sure that the headings are clearly labelled so that the reader can navigate their way around the CV easily. White space is your friend, so ensure that white space is spread liberally throughout the CV because that helps to draw the reader's attention to the words. Use a contemporary typeface like Calibri or Arial and to a minimum point size of 11. Nobody likes to squint when they're reading a CV. Don't be tempted by over-designed CVs. Having lots of pretty colours, or maybe your initials embossed into a logo, may look good, but it's not going to secure you an interview. A decision on calling you to interview will be made by reading the words in the CV, not the design behind it. It's unbelievable to think that over 50% of CVs still contain spelling errors. When you think about it, it sounds unforgivable. With all these online spell checks and dictionaries available to us, how is it that so many CVs still contain mistakes? Well, the answer is quite an easy one, because of course online spell checks don't pick up every grammatical error. But the most important thing is that when you become over familiar with a document, when you read it lots and lots of times, you can become blind to mistakes within it. So the solution is an easy one. Get someone else to proofread your CV for you. On average, less than 30 seconds will be spent reading a CV. It's incredible when you think about it, all those hours you spent toiling away, and then for a decision being made on calling you to interview made in the blink of an eye. But this is what it is. Recruiters are time pressed. So it's important to distill the information. And I would recommend keeping your CV onto a 2-page format, because what that does is it encourages you to think carefully about what to include and what not to include. It gives you a good framework from which to begin with. Generally, you'd want to focus on the most recent years of your career because those are most likely to be the most closely aligned to the roles that you're applying for. So write more on your most recent jobs and less on the roles going further back in time. Use as few words as possible to make your points. Bullet points are great for getting messages across succinctly. So keep your CV punchy and concise and to 2 pages. Remember, a CV is about getting you to interview. It's not about getting a job. So you don't need to include lots of detail. You need to include just the right amount of information to whet the appetite of the reader, just enough to want to call you in to find out more. As an experienced finance professional, the kind of CV structure you're most likely to use will be the reverse chronological format. This is the kind that you'll be most familiar with, where your most recent work history will be at the front of the CV, and then the CV will flow back in time to your earlier experiences. Quite simply, you want the reader to focus on your most recent years, because these are likely to be most closely aligned to the roles that you're applying for. So you will write more on the most recent jobs and less on the jobs going further back in time. Your CV should start with a professional profile, positioning you in line with the jobs that you're applying for. Then the predominant space will be the career history section, and then you'll have a qualification section at the end of the CV. You want to put all the most important information on the first page of the CV, because that is where most concentration will be given by the reader. So structure your CV in a way that enables you to do this best. Understanding your target audience is a concept familiar to most marketing and communications professionals. In fact, it underpins all good communications. So the same is true for a CV. But here we'll call it putting yourself in the shoes of the reader. Now, to help put you in the shoes of the reader, we're going to imagine what it's like to be the time-pressed recruiter. My boss has just called. She wants me to produce 5 CVs for shortlist in the space of an hour. I've got this pile of 50 CVs to get through. So how am I going to do this? Well, I think the easiest way is through a process of elimination. To scan read the CVs quickly and decide which ones I'm not going to put forward. So basically, I'm going to use a negative process. I've got this job description and a person specification, and so I'm going to see which ones definitely don't meet these criteria, and then the ones that go in the maybe pile I'll come back to later, and I'll give those a deeper read. Right, let's get started. Right, what have we got here? Right, well, they've got the right qualifications. The job titles are okay. There's some good examples of achievements in here. But they've spelt professional wrong in the professional profile, right at the beginning of the CV. 2 F's in professional. Well, that's hardly professional, is it? I mean, this looks like a brilliant candidate. They might be a fantastic accountant, but with that one small error in the CV, I cannot possibly put this forward. I mean, I would worry about their attention to detail. There's simply no way that I can put this one forward. So I'm sorry, but that's for the no pile. Right, let's have a look at this one here. This one's 11 pages long, and the point size is tiny. I mean, thankfully I've got my trusty Mac. Even with this, I can hardly read it. I mean, I don't know how many words there are in this. Maybe about 10,000. I mean, I've seen PhD theses that have less words than this in it. It's crazy. I mean, I don't have this much time. Not only that, so we've got jobs in the 1990s with a page devoted to it, and yet a short paragraph on the most recent job. There's a complete imbalance of information here. This person has clearly just been building on their CV over time without ever reviewing it, without ever refreshing it, and concentrating on their most recent jobs. I don't have enough time, and the boss isn't going to have enough time. So unfortunately, this one's for the no pile too. Right, what have we got here? A one-pager, so certainly not going to take too long. Some nice pictures on it. I mean, they've even crafted their name into a logo. But the trouble is, there's absolutely no other information in there. There's no information on achievements, on work history. This person is solely relying on their initials being embossed in a logo. I mean, these things do actually happen in CVs, I can promise you. But there's no way that I can put this forward. They're simply relying on the design of the CV and not the content. So I'm afraid this one's for the no pile too. Right, let's have a look at this next one. We're not doing very well so far, are we? Well, we've got the right qualifications. The job titles look good. It's 2 pages, so it's not going to take me too long to read. Yep, there's white space throughout the CV, so I can read it easily. This is all looking good. Yeah, so this is one I think that I'll come back to a bit later. So I think this one can go in my maybe pile. So we're beginning to make some headway now, but you can see how some CVs have created an automatic no situation. I cannot possibly put forward CVs that have spelling errors in them. I mean, it's unforgivable. So this candidate is making it easier for me to read the CV, so I'm more likely to give that one more attention. Putting yourself in the shoes of the reader. It's one of the greatest secrets in writing a CV, this ability to externalise yourself, to understand reading a CV from the point of view of the reader. If you can do this, you're halfway towards getting that all-important interview because you're showing that understanding that the recruiter is looking for. And the way to do this is to read carefully the job and more particularly the person specification of the role that you're applying for. Now, the person specification details all the criteria that are important for that employer. So if you can read and understand those and mirror that information in your CV, then you're really going a long way towards getting that interview. And the key to this is to read the job description and the person specification for the role that you're applying for. Now, the person specification is particularly important because this details the criteria with which that employer is assessing your CV. So if you can ensure that you show how you meet that criteria, you're going to be going a long way towards securing that interview. Many job seekers recite a list of duties and responsibilities in their CV. Some simply copy and paste their job description. But this is simply not enough. I mean, a job description is a generic set of responsibilities. It's very impersonal and dry. But you want a CV to tell your story, your actual experience within that role. So don't rely on a job description. The way to do this is to concentrate on your achievements. So yes, have a quick summary of your role, but then focus and have much more detail on your specific experiences. So be anecdotal. Tell the reader about all the improvements that you've made, all the achievements that you've done within that role, so that you begin to tell your story. And if you've been at an employer for a certain period of time, of course that story might have changed over time. You may have had increased responsibilities, carried out special projects. So what kind of achievements could you include in a CV? Well, of course, there are lots and lots of different things that you may have done. It could have been that you've automated a process that has helped reduce the time to do a particular task, and therefore there may be a cost saving attached to that. Perhaps you've improved the management reporting that has helped the company to identify costs that were being leaked that weren't present before, or at least weren't identified before. Perhaps your new management reports have helped the company to identify new revenue streams for new products or services. All of these things will have a positive impact on the organisation. And so that achievement is one thing, but if you can also include facts and figures that describe the outcomes of what you've done, that adds a real sense of concreteness to the CV. So try to always include facts and figures wherever you can, whether that's actual money saved or percentage time saved in doing something. Those facts and figures look great for recruiters because, as I say, they add a real sense of concreteness to what you do. The phrase ATS can send shivers down the spine of many job seekers. ATS, or applicant tracking systems, are used by a lot of organisations and job boards to filter CVs. They work in a very similar way to search engines like Google. Search engines have algorithms so that when you type in key terms and phrases, it scours the web to look for concentrations of similar key terms and phrases within websites, and it will then bring those to your attention and rank them accordingly. With ATS, you have an uploaded job description and person specification, and then you have all the people that have applied for that role in their CV. So what the ATS does is it analyses the CVs for concentrations of key terms and phrases within the job description and the person specification, and it will then rank the CVs accordingly. It's estimated that over 70% of CVs are filtered out by ATS before they're even read by a human. And when you think that there are over 200 ATS systems out there, each working in a slightly different way, slightly different algorithms, or perhaps configured for a client's specific needs, it's not surprising perhaps that so many people fear ATS systems. So how on earth are we going to get your CV through this ATS system? Well, we could use one of these and wave it around and hope that a little magic might get it through. But in fact, there's a few short steps that you can take to help get your CV through that ATS system that don't require any magic, thankfully. The first thing to do is to look at the job description and the person specification for the role that you're applying for. Identify the key terms and phrases within it and mirror those in your CV. That's going to help your CV to get ranked more highly. There are other things that you can do too. ATS systems prefer Word documents to PDFs, so apply using a Word document and make sure that all the information is contained within the main body of the Word document. ATS systems can get confused by tables and headers or footers, so keep all that information in the main body. And one final thing, don't include any information in pictorial form because ATS only understand words, so don't have any graphics or design features with important information in. Remember though, job descriptions for even the same job can be written very differently. It's worth trying this for yourself. Do a bit of internet research for a financial controller position or whatever position is relevant to you. Pull off 3 examples and you'll see quite how differently each of them are written. And what this means is You cannot just use one version of your CV to apply for every job. You need to tailor it for every job that you apply for, because every job description and person specification will have different types of keywords. And the more closely that you can align your CV to each job that you apply for, the better your CV will perform. A good rule of thumb is to spend more time on fewer applications, and your conversion rate will go up accordingly if you try that approach, rather than the scattergun approach of using one CV to apply for multiple roles, which can ultimately lead to frustration. By using some of these practical, common sense tips and advice, you can be sure that every time that you apply for a role, your CV will work as hard as it can to get you that interview. And that's as much as you can do. Happy job hunting.